Hello everyone, welcome to my Week 7 discussion board presentation on dealing with workplace conflict. So for conflict management, I found this very informative video that's just under 6 minutes long. The video emphasizes the importance of being able to manage conflict that arises in a team setting. This is done by either stopping the conflict when it's not helpful or productive to the project, but also being able to recognize when certain conflict situations are productive in nature and promote discussions on important project issues. The main theme discussed in the video is for any person who's trying to manage team conflict, for them to be able to use resources that they have at hand and to be able to educate themselves and the team on the types of conflicts that are expected from certain projects that they're working on. At the 5-minute mark of the video, it talks about the importance of taking time and being able to take a break and communicate with the team on certain conflict issues that have started to cause problems or rifts between team members. And they try to resolve and reassess where they're at on the project and new timeframes and phases. In my experience, this is really important because of time constraints in normal work life. Managers or supervisors often skip this part and avoid any conflict resolution scenarios, which ends up affecting morale and causes less efficiency in the work being done. I found this very interesting and informative video of a panel of experts in the field of dispute system design, where the panel goes on to discuss and answer questions on how the dispute system design framework has worked really well within structured institutions and what they've learned, and how that experience can be extrapolated and implemented into community settings. The discussion itself in the video starts at the 15-minute mark and goes on to the end of the video, which is a really long video, but the conversation is very informative. But you don't have to watch the entire thing. I recommend watching maybe the first 10-15 minutes and you'll get the gist of the discussion and the main questions, which focus on the difficulties of trying to implement the dispute system design in large communities where there is no structural format. So it's hard to identify leaders who have authority or power within the communities, and even identifying specific stakeholders that might be affected by the disputes from this system. And for Dr. Sundstrom, if you scroll the video over to the 18-minute 45-second mark, you'll hear one of the panelists, Shannon Fong, being introduced as an ombudsman and not an ombudsperson, which I thought was very interesting. Also, for conflict management, I found this interesting article titled "The Management of Workplace Conflict: Contrasting Pathways in the Human Resource Management Literature." The paper goes on to discuss that from the literature, there's agreement that workplace conflict is ultimately bad for organizations, and that the traditional train of thought used to put the blame for the persistence of workplace conflict on managerial failure. However, newer research acknowledges the complexities of workplace conflicts and the limitations that managers have given the tools and training to work with. Through the literature review, the paper identifies the potential pathways, or four potential pathways to reduce the occurrence of workplace conflict. The pathway that I found most interesting is discussed on page 501 and focuses on the proactive efforts of line managers or direct supervisors to prevent workplace conflict by serving as mentors and filling in a coaching role. By doing so, managers can help develop employee skills and identify when employees are unhappy with their work or with the organization as a whole. Finally, for workplace training, I use this paper titled "Individual and Organizational Factors Promoting Successful Responses to Workplace Conflict." This article looked at workplace conflict through a multitude of psychological, emotional, and cognitive perspectives, which all have an impact on an individual's ability to deal with workplace conflict. The paper went into further detail to mention that there's strong evidence that organizational conflict resolution training at the workplace has positive effects on the workforce by increasing the conflict handling capacity that the workers have. The part that I found most interesting was at the very end of the paper on page 307, where it mentions how there should be further studies to determine how power dynamics within the organization affects conflict resolution, since there's individuals that are perceived with higher power or higher influence tend to have different views and perspectives regarding workplace conflict compared to a lower power worker. Conflict in a government department. So I'm going to use a real life example from my work. I work at a wastewater treatment plant for a water municipality. The conflict in question arose between electricians from the electrical department and wastewater treatment plant operators. At the facility, we had this wet well that wasn't functioning properly. These wet wells, they get filled with water, and as they fill up with water, there are these floats that get triggered and kick on the pump and empty the well. Well, there's a float at the very bottom that protects the pump and keeps it from turning on when it's dry. That way the pump doesn't run hot and fail. But we're having issues with the system, with the float system, so we ended up having to take out the floats above ground and bypassing them in a little, what we call a Mickey Mouse. Not a real fix, but just a temporary fix to get us by for the day. An electrician ended up driving by, saw that the floats were above ground, and reported it directly to his supervisor without discussing or talking to the operators at the treatment plant first. And then it turned into this big thing that we weren't operating the system according to how the parameters, and we were risking damaging the pump. But then again, the electricians didn't understand the issues that we were running into, and we needed to run these pumps, otherwise the wet wells will overflow and spill onto the street. So yeah, it would have been, it was a big miscommunication between both departments. The dispute resolution design that I would recommend is very basic, following the hierarchy of command. There was no need for the electrician to go straight to his direct supervisor about the issue when he could have talked to us operators in a lateral conversation, or talked to the senior operator at the treatment plant to get more information instead of jumping over personnel or leadership roles. The type of training I would recommend would be just a better communication training. In part, on the side of the operators, we could have written an email or called the electricians, letting them know the issues we were having and the short-term fix that we were implementing to get through the day and prevent any spillage of the wet well water. And communication on the part of the electricians, where they could have also tried harder to get a hold of one of the operators versus going straight to their supervisor and screaming out a red flag when there was good reason for the short-term fix. And in this method, you avoid implementing or having to involve any upper management for this conflict, which could have been resolved between operator communication. And further training could have been done practicing on a mock email on what could have been said or conveyed information-wise between the two departments. Thank you so much for watching. This is a list of my references for the videos and articles that I covered in my presentation. And I hope everyone has an awesome weekend.